Thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, and for my colorful CV. I think that the reason why I'm here is, as you've mentioned it, I was for several years the head of a short-lived institution of higher education research, which was funded at the time by the Ministry of Science and Research, mainly dealing with university corporations and with some kind of educational research and questions of university evaluations. That was in the 1990s. And from there on, I got involved in a lot of actually evaluation programs on the European level. So apart from my research work, which was more in the social sciences actually, I somehow drifted into this management of higher education and higher education, call it ranking or university rankings as well, and project evaluations. So this is why I'm here. So let me please introduce the panelists today, and if you allow, I would like to start from the back, and I would like to start with the lady to my right here, Beate Tremmel, who is actually a student from this university. She holds a degree in economics, if I remember that correctly, from this university, and she is also the international officer of the Austrian Students' Union at the moment, and she also used to be on the international level, but I will come to that, a member of the steering committee of the European Students' Union Experts for Quality Assurance. So this is why we have invited you here today. The second, or actually first commentator on the lecture we are going to hear will be Vice Rector of the Technical University of Graz, Professor Horst Bishop, who is responsible Vice Rector for Research, if I'm correctly informed. And you must know that the two universities, the University of Graz and the University of the Technical University of Graz, are actually members of a network which is called Navigrad, and it is one of the best practice networks in university cooperation that we have here in Austria. About 10% of their students are involved in this kind of networking and mutual attendance of classes and programs. Let me now come to our main speaker of the evening, Rodrigo Costas Comesaña, who is a researcher from the University of Leiden and, to be more precise, from the Center of Science and Technology Studies at Leiden University. He himself holds a degree in library and information sciences, if I'm correctly informed, and his work is centered on the development of bibliometric tools and indicators, and also on research-based quantitative data in order and their application to university rankings. Your colleague that we were expecting but who unfortunately couldn't come, Clara Calero Medina, I think also specializes in a different aspect here, which has to do with network analysis or networks of co-authorship and how they can be applied to university rankings. Your model of university ranking, as I understand it, from the University of Leiden, differs significantly from other models of university ranking that we have globally and in Europe, and I think this will be some of the aspects that you're going to talk about. May we ask you for your lecture, please?
Yeah, okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to come here. So as it was mentioned, this presentation was expected to be given by my colleague Clara Calero, but unfortunately she couldn't come so I'm afraid that you will have to hear me this time. But well, I'm involved in CWTS in the development of some of the most advanced tools and indicators, so I'm well aware of how the light and ranking and our ranking works. And also we have important knowledge on how the different rankings that I'm going to discuss are designed and yeah, what are the main characteristics. So let me start with an outline of the main topics that I would like to discuss with you today. In the first place, I would like to discuss why university rankings have become so popular, why they attract so much attention. Secondly, I think it would be interesting to discuss the main features of these university rankings, particularly those that are more famous and more international. And finally, we could have some debate on what actually do these university rankings capture. So what are the concepts that we could expect to be measured in these rankings. So then, university rankings. Basically, we have a new university ranking, I would say, every year, every time, per country. So there are university rankings everywhere. So they are booming. And probably one of the reasons why they are booming is because they normally attract a lot of attention. So they have normally a broad press coverage. So every time that the Leiden ranking or the Shanghai ranking is published, all the newspapers from the different countries pay attention, and then they start to discuss the positioning of the different universities, etc., etc. So this is a type of product that attracts a lot of attention. There are also, so probably due to this attention and central position in the press debate, they are also becoming more influential, increasingly influential. So more and more policymakers, politicians, managers, also researchers themselves look at rankings and pay attention to what they are saying. And probably also to this increasingly influential role of rankings, we find that universities are starting to respond to them. So they start to include them in their strategic plans, in their missions. We can also see how they create the offices and departments that focus on how the universities are positioning the rankings and what should they do in order to improve their positions in their rankings. So, for example, a clear case of a university incorporating this idea of the rankings in their for example, strategic plan is the case of the University of Helsinki. So, in their strategic plan for the period 2013-2016, they literally state that their strategic objective is to be counted among the 50 leading universities in the world. And of course, we may discuss a lot of things here, how this can be achieved, what are the strategies to implement this objective. But perhaps a much simple question could be 50 leading universities on what? On production, on the quality of the education, on impact, on infrastructures, on funding. So we see how the philosophy of the rankings is incorporated in the strategic plan, but it's not clear what exactly that means. Okay, let's then now think on why university rankings attract this huge attention. Probably to answer that question, we have to go to a much broader question: what is the value of knowledge for our societies nowadays? So clearly, we see that knowledge is an important asset for our economies, for our social and political powers. So knowledge is critical. And who are the most important knowledge producers internationally? Well, mostly the universities. Of course, we have other organizations, research institutes, research councils that also do science and produce knowledge. But let's say that universities are the most standardized knowledge producer worldwide. So all countries have universities, basically. So in a way, universities, due to this central role in producing new knowledge, they also have changed their perception. So they from being just a kind of social expenditure, something that was nice to have, to something that is a valuable asset for a society or for a country. So the universities of a country are central in this discussion of how to improve the economy, how to make a more knowledge-based economy. And also we have that due to this competition for knowledge, we also see how universities are starting to try to attract brain power, try to attract the best students, the best researchers, to attract funding and resources. So there is some kind of competition, and then is when rankings become prominent. Because then rankings are a tool to show that a university is good in teaching, in scientific production, in researching, in etc. So at least this is how they are perceived many times. So let's take then now a look at the most important international university rankings. So I will just briefly mention the Arwu University ranking, basically the Shanghai ranking. Also the Times Higher Education University ranking, the QS University ranking, that QS stands for Quacquarelle Simons, that is a company specialized in education. We always make joke with this name because it sounds like kind of, very sounding. Then I will mention the U multi-rank, and finally, of course, I will discuss the CWTS university ranking. Okay, so the Shanghai ranking. This ranking is published by the Center for World-Class Universities in the Shanghai Jiao Tong University. And the purpose is to rank the best 500 universities in the world. That's the objective, and actually what they do. They basically use a compound indicator that includes, a series of indicators. So here we can see the different indicators. So we see how they have indicators for quality of education, quality of the faculty, some indication on the research output, and also indication of the per capita performance. So every indicator has a different weight, because, as I say, it's a final compound indicator. So of course we could discuss a lot why these weights and not others. So why, for example, the papers published in Nature and Science have a weight of 20%, and why the per capita academic performance only 10%. So these are typical things that could be discussed when you have indicators that combine other indicators with different weights. So we see also other indicators, like, for example, the number of students or alumni that have won a Nobel Prize or a Fields Medal. Same for the staff, for the researchers and the professors. They also look at highly cited researchers that work for the university. And here again, we could also ask questions like, well, is the researcher at the moment of producing the output that made him or her highly cited, or the production at the university? So this type of questions that we could raise. But well, this is in summary the Shanghai ranking. The Times Higher Education ranking is a bit similar. So it also combines different dimensions of indicators. In this case, they also include indicators that are based on surveys. So many times, information provided by the universities themselves, like, for example, the surveys on teaching or surveys on the students. They have also a dimension on citations that accounts for 30% of the whole value of the indicator. And then we can see the different weights attributed to each of the other indicators. But so important things on the Times Higher Education ranking: compound indicator combining quantitative and qualitative data, survey data, and also some bibliometric data. Then we can mention the QS University ranking. This ranking has a very clear target, that is to inform or to help students to make informed comparisons about the universities that they can choose for their studies, for their education. It's a ranking with more than 800 universities, so it's quite comprehensive. And perhaps an interesting characteristic is that the top 500 universities have an individual ranking position, while from the position 400 onwards, they make groups of universities, for example, from 400 to 410. A common characteristic of the QS ranking compared to the previous ones is that it's also a compound indicator, so combines different indicators into a final metric. They combine dimensions like academic reputation, in this case based again on a survey of academics, employer reputation, the ratio of faculty per student, that's a kind of indication of the commitment to teaching of the universities. Also some bibliometric data like citations per faculty or the international student ratio or international staff ratio. So all these indicators, you can see they have different weights. Again, the question why these weights and not others. But this is basically the QS ranking. The U multi-rank is a special type of ranking. And perhaps to talk about the U multi-rank is better to talk about the principles behind the ranking. So for example, it's not a unique ranking with one single list of universities, but it's a ranking that the users, depending on their needs, on their questions, can modify depending on what they want to know. So in a way, it's a user-driven type of ranking. And another important characteristic of this ranking is that it's multidimensional. So they assume that universities, research organizations are multi-purpose, so they have many different objectives, many different purposes, also many different activities, and then it's best to inform these activities and dimensions individually. That's the idea of the principle of multidimensionality. Another important principle is the principle of multi-levelness. So basically universities are combinations of different elements, so different faculties, departments, groups, and also they have contacts with other external organizations, with hospitals, with other research institutes, sometimes with companies. So then it's important to also consider these different type of levels that you can find in the composition of a university. Then another quite obvious principle is the principle of comparability. So you have to try to rank universities that are the most similar, so like, in order to compare like with like. So universities that share similar missions, similar structures, or similar objectives. And of course, another important principle, this is very obvious, is that this ranking must be sound. So the methodology must be correct, and no mistakes should be incorporated in the ranking. So something that is quite obvious. And then finally, we have, of course, the Leiden ranking, the CWTS Leiden ranking. This is a ranking that focuses only on one dimension, that is scientific performance, so scientific production. It's a bibliometric ranking as such. We have recently launched the new 2015 ranking, and there have been some modifications, some changes in the methodology. I will discuss some of them. But some elements that could go into this idea of internationalization, so what makes the Leiden ranking more international, is that the Leiden ranking is based on the so-called core publications. And core publications are those papers, those articles and reviews in the Web of Science that can be considered as truly international. So here we mean publications that must be in English, that in terms of authors and citations given and received must have an international profile, so that they don't receive only submissions from one country or only citations from one country. So that's what we mean with core international publications. Also journals that are not truly or only oriented to a scientific results, like trade magazines or business magazines, are excluded. So we try to focus on the most scientific subset of the Web of Science database. It's also international because we look at 750 universities from all over the world, so from most countries. And also that we apply normalized indicators at the world level. So in order to normalize by fields, we consider the production in a given field as a benchmark, the reference value, always considered in the world, okay, the whole world. So this is the main page of the ranking. So right now the most important, or the indicator used to rank the countries in the first page, because later on you can change and do your own rankings, is the proportion of publications that belong to the top 10% most cited papers in the world. We can see how the MIT is the first institution with almost 25% of its publications being highly cited. And perhaps some important characteristics that we may need to consider and maybe later discuss is that it's a user-driven ranking. So any user can change and modify some of the parameters. So you may decide if you want to look at the production fractionalized or full counting. You may look by different disciplines. You may look at indicators of impact, also indicators of collaboration. So in a way, what I like of the CWTS Leiden ranking is that it incorporates a lot of different elements. It doesn't create one single compound indicator. It allows the user to check different elements that may be relevant for that user. We also contemplate two main dimensions of indicators, the size-dependent and size-independent. With size-dependent, we mean that so basically the size of the output of the university is basically accounted in the indicator. Is the output, basically. And size-independent is when we divide by that output. So we consider the citations of a university divided by the number of publications. That allows the comparison of universities of different sizes. So we can compare a big university with a small university in terms of average impact or the proportion of highly cited publications. As I mentioned, the highly cited publications is used for the ranking, but there are other indicators, for example, indicators on collaboration. And we also incorporate other indicators like the mean normalized citation score or the total normalized citation score of a university. And in the rankings, we also incorporate something to assess the reliability of the indicator. So somehow rankings have put a lot of stress on the position of a university in the ranking, but they hardly ever inform if these differences in the position are really important, or if maybe the difference between the third and the fourth is not that big. That's simply, okay, there is a difference, but you cannot really make a huge assessment based on that difference. We will discuss this a bit later. Also, an important element that sometimes I don't see in many of the other rankings is the discussion what is actually a university, because something that may appear as straightforward is not the case. So it's not, it's a concept that is not clearly established. And we find differences across countries on what is considered as a university. And in our case, we consider some commonly noted elements for the inclusion of universities in the ranking. One is that the institution, the university, must have some dedication to education. So education must be a role of the university. Also, that there must be a research component, so there must be some research intensity. Of course, otherwise it wouldn't appear in the Leiden ranking. The university must also have the authority to grant PhDs, to grant doctorates. And also the activity must be, to some degree, broad in disciplines. So maybe specialized universities, but even in their specialization, they must have some broadness in their topics. And many times this broadness, you can see it through the connections with other institutions, like, for example, university hospitals. But even we have this criteria, we have to say that the universities are constantly changing. So they change their policies, they change their structures, they transform constantly. So we have a group of people at Leiden that they are constantly checking what is a university, how they are defined, trying to standardize them. The more you can, and well, let's say it's something that in many of the rankings seems to be assumed, but we want to highlight that it's not necessarily an easy question. What is actually a university? An important element also for the Leiden ranking is the data collection. So how to identify the universities. So as you may know, bibliometric data is not straightforward. So there are a lot of noise and variance in the affiliation data. So we have a group of people who are looking at this variance, trying to harmonize the affiliations. But besides looking at the different variants, there is also some study on the organization of the university. So we try to extract knowledge on how the university is organized. For example, if it has linkages with hospitals, or if the university has affiliated institutes or other organizations. So it's not simply that the authors say, I'm University of Graz, is that I may be University of Graz and an institute, or something that is associated, or other types of organizations that they may not appear clear directly from the data. So in this sense, we identify 3 different types of links between the organizational entities. The first one is a component. So this is, for example, when a university has a university hospital that fully belongs to the university, that you can say that this is part of the university. In that case, all the publications of the component are assigned to the main university. So this is the case, for example, of the Leiden University Medical Center and the University Leiden. So the Leiden University Medical Center so the researchers there may use the LUMC name, the Leiden University Medical Center, without mentioning directly the university, but we know that this medical center must be linked to the university. So the publication of the hospital belong to the university. Another case is the joint research facilities. So this is, for example, when an institution has linkages or belongs to more than one university. So an example here could be the Brighton and Sussex Medical School that belongs to both the University of Brighton and the University of Sussex. In this case, we would assign the publications of this institute to both institutions. And finally, we have a third case that is associated. So these are relationships between, for example, the Massachusetts General Hospital with the Harvard Medical School for, let's say, joint projects or joint activities, but they are not really, organically part of the other. So in this case, we would consider that the publications from the Massachusetts General Hospital that appear together with the Harvard Medical School belong fully to the Harvard Medical School. That would be the criteria to consider these publications. But again, I must insist here, it's not an easy step. It's not necessarily always correct. And it's sometimes for us a surprise that this type of questions are not discussed for many of the other rankings. Well, digging a little bit more into the Leiden ranking, in this new version of the 2015 ranking, we have 5 main fields of disciplinary fields. These fields are created not based on the classification of journals, like could be, for example, the journal citation reports that is based on the classification of journals. This is a paper-based classification. So basically, we take every paper in the Web of Science, we look at the relationships of this paper through citations received or citations given, and we cluster every paper in a cluster with the most similar papers. Let's say papers that cite and receive citations in the same manner. So that means that they belong to the same topic. This has an advantage that publications from multidisciplinary journals like Nature, Science, PLOS ONE or PNAS are individually classified. So it's an advantage compared to other classifications. And something that I think is, something that I like a lot of the Leiden ranking is that it provides a bibliometric profile for every university. So in addition to the ranking that may be more or less useful, is that per university you can see a lot of bibliometric data, bibliometric indicators that can be useful for many other purposes. So for example, in this case for the University of Graz, we can see the total number of publications, in this case the fractional counting of publications. We can see the number of publications that belong to the top 1% most cited papers in the world, or the top 10%. We also have the top 50 most cited publications. The total number of citations, or the total normalized, field normalized citations of the university. So that's, for example, in the size-dependent column. In the size-independent, we have the proportion of these highly cited papers, and also the mean citation score, or the mean normalized citation score of the university. In addition, we can also see the thematic profile, with considering these 5 main disciplines. So then this helps to see which are the strongest fields of activity of the university as covered in the Web of Science. And other elements are, for example, the benchmark of the university with the world. So for example, we can see that in all the fields, University of Graz is at the international level in the 1% indicator. So say the University of Graz is roughly producing what would be expected as top 1% publications. It's producing a little bit more of top 10% publications, so publications that are among the top 10% most cited, because University of Graz has around 12%, and it produces also more publications than expected that belong to the top 50 most cited papers. And we can see this for the other 5 disciplines. So we can also see in which disciplines the university is performing better or not that better. Okay, and this is basically the main ranking based on the proportion of top 10% publications. This is what any speaker presenting rankings would like to show. You come to Graz, and the University of Graz is the first. So that's good news. So we can see how the University of Graz is the first with 12% of top 10% highly cited publications. So we can say that University of Graz is producing more highly cited publications than would be expected, at least with this threshold of the top 10%. Then is the Medical University of Vienna, Vienna University of Technology. So the Graz University of Technology is in the 6th position, and unfortunately the Medical University of Graz is in this ranking limited to Austria. What perhaps would be interesting to see is that actually the values are not that different. So if we take the 4 or 5 first universities, they are producing kind of similar degree of highly cited publications. So it's true that the University of Graz has 12%, but if we look at the stability interval that basically tries to measure the uncertainty if other, let's say, data sets would be considered, the stability intervals are calculated using the technique, the bootstrapping technique that basically resamples the data set, so trying to find if missing some publications or having more of some other types of publications, the values would change significantly. And then we can see how the stability interval of the University of Graz overlaps quite a lot with the Medical University of Vienna or the Vienna University of Technology, just to mention a few. So in essence, here what I want to remark is the idea that although the quantitative indicator shows some differences, in the end these differences are not that big. So that's, it's true, it's first and it's in that position, but yeah, we also need to pay attention to these small differences. Other ranking is based on the proportion of publications in collaboration with any type of collaboration. Then we can see how the University of Vienna or the University of Natural Resources and Life Sciences and also the University of Innsbruck have more than 80% of their publications with some type of collaboration. In the case of Graz, we can see that this is a value of 79.6%. Also quite high, I would say. We also have the proportion of publications in international collaboration. Then here, the University of Innsbruck is the one with the highest value, followed relatively closely with, by the University of Vienna. So these two universities have both more than 68% of their publications with some degree of international collaboration. And in the case of University of Graz, this is 62.8. And yeah, I think the lowest is the Graz University of Technology. But if you would, for example, choose another indicator, that is the proportion of publications in collaboration with industry, then is the University of Technology of Graz the one that is on top. So this helps to see how the ranking can give you different pictures depending on what you want to see. Well, just a few hints on a kind of reflection of yeah, what are these rankings telling us? What do they capture? And I would say I would put a question mark to everything that I say. So this is in fact an open question. So some people will say that they capture academic reputation. So the already known universities are the ones that are going to be on top. Some other people would argue that these rankings just capture the size or the resources that the universities have, so that makes them also to be high in the ranking. Those rankings that have some educational data, like students, like quality of education, etc., may capture something related with the learning environment, so how students feel and how they do in their studies. They may also indicate something about the career perspectives. So as we discussed before, these rankings may be used by students to choose their universities, but also by PhDs to choose where to do their thesis, their research, or for example, postdoctoral researchers to continue their scientific career. Of course, bibliometric indicators capture research output and impact in terms of publications and citations. That is expected to be a proxy of scientific impact. And also we could ask ourselves if indicators in the end don't measure anything else than fashion and marketing. Maybe you have universities that do a lot of marketing, they attract resources, they attract researchers and students, and then they improve in the rankings. But it's not the ranking that makes them improve. And just finally, some critical points that we need to consider when working with rankings. The first one is the monodimensionality. So the idea that, for example, the Leiden ranking only measures one dimension, but there are other dimensions, like education or social impact of the university that are not captured by these indicators. Also be aware of the compound indicators, because they kind of give the impression that this is the unique list or the best ranking of universities, but in the end they have different dimensions, different decisions, different weights. So keep in mind also this question. Also we need to pay attention to the data. So perhaps sometimes rankings are more useful because they provide data than because they provide a ranking. So sometimes, as I say, the difference between the third and the fourth or the fourth and the fifth are not that big. So you can say, well, they are ranked, but virtually they are the same. The performance is basically the same. We need to pay attention how rankings may be dependent on the size of the university or the mix of disciplines that are covered by the university. Many times in rankings we have a lack of consideration of the input-output relationship. It's true that some rankings try to capture something on the number of staff, the number of students, but sometimes these data are not standardized. They are reported many times by the university, so we don't really know the quality of this data, so it's difficult to make these relations input-output. And finally, of course, we need to pay attention to the local differences. So universities in Austria may be different from universities in Spain, universities in the Netherlands, and then just because we have all of them in a ranking doesn't mean that they are all the same. And we need to pay attention to these questions and to these characteristics. And I think this is my last slide. Thank you very much.